We're speaking today at World Ag Expo with Lucas Fuess, the Senior Dairy Analyst for Rabo AgriFinance. I'm thinking of the older name that we're used to. He has just made a presentation at the seminar center here talking about the global dairy picture for both supply and demand. Lucas is someone we're acquainted with. We were happy to meet him last year. Like me, he is a native of Central New York. His family still milks cows there near Syracuse, New York, a 300-head herd. And so we're glad to speak to Lucas today. We thought he had some very interesting comments that we want to share with you. And welcome to Dairy Business News.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. It's always great to talk with you, Joel.
You began by looking at the global supply picture, and you said that both in U.S. as well as some of the major countries, supplies are relatively tight.
Mm-hmm. It has been almost fascinating to see by some measures. Milk supply is tight almost everywhere around the world where we typically would see countries exporting dairy products. New Zealand has had a pretty flat but pretty unimpressive season overall, coming off of their peak, which was in the fourth quarter. In the European Union, we've seen several consecutive months of lower milk production versus prior year. We do expect that to persist here throughout the next several months and throughout their spring flush period. And in the US, the most recent data that we have is from December, but that marked the sixth consecutive month of lower production, down the entire second half of 2023. In some, all of those areas producing less milk. It's almost rare that we would see that coming from all of those key areas. But unfortunately, because demand has been pretty muted as well, it hasn't necessarily caused any sort of a bullish price reaction like we typically might expect from tighter milk around all those areas. As we move forward, I think there's probably a few more months left of some of this tight supply situation before we kind of move into more of a flat situation or probably even gains into the several months from now, well into at the end of this year. But it has been certainly interesting to watch this tighter supply situation emerge on a global basis over the past few months.
We've heard from a number of industry commentators, as well as your presentation just now, that even if there is some upward movement in price, which we can all hope for, there are not a lot of heifers out there. Mm-hmm. So the cow population, which is lower than it might have been has been for a while, mm-hmm. Won't necessarily jump right up in response to increased prices. Talk a little bit about cow numbers and heifer numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably one of those bullish wild cards that I'm watching throughout 2024. Total cow numbers down over the past several months after the most recent peak, which was 1 year ago in February of 2023. We've seen pretty consistently lower numbers of cows since then. And then you mentioned those replacement heifers at more than a decade level low. We're also still seeing the beef on dairy trend where even before birth, dairy farmers already have allotted a certain percentage of their calves to the beef market instead of dairy and know that they are not available to move into the dairy supply chain. What that all means is that replacements are very lean. Farmers have figured out that it takes quite a bit of money to feed a heifer for the first 2 years of her life before she starts producing a single penny of revenue. And I think what is different is that we are now so lean on those replacements that if or when we see milk prices kind of recover to much healthier levels or much more profitable levels, farmers don't necessarily have the ability to add cows to really capitalize on that. It could create a bit of a tightness that we aren't used to seeing because farmers are prevented from adding cows to the herd by any sort of meaningful level here in the near term.
Sure. Some of the figures that we've heard recently from other national organizations, and you referenced it in your talk, was that exports of U.S. dairy products into the global marketplace were actually down in 2023 after a number of years of increases. Put that in context. I was interested to hear how you described the context for those figures.
Yes. Exports throughout basically the entirety of 2023 lower. Essentially, almost every product, I think with the exception of WPC 80 and lactose, exports were lower in 2023. However, it's important to remember that it was against a record high 2022. 2022, whether you measure it on volume or on value, was a record. So we're down against a record year. If we look at 2023 exports versus the prior years, 21, 20, 19, 18, it was still overall a pretty good year, and we're still sending significant amounts of product abroad. It was just a little bit tough to watch all of that red on the charts throughout last year as we were comparing against that record.
Sure.
I think that it's probably important to look at some of the trends among who's buying what and where is the product going. A lot of that driven by weakness in demand from China, Southeast Asia, countries kind of across the Pacific Ocean. Alternatively, Mexico's demand was quite healthy in 2023. In many months, seeing record levels of both cheese and non-fat dry milk moving south. Mexico, the number one customer for U.S. dairy. Just an all-around kind of amazing story of Mexican demand in 2023, even regardless of some of the challenges that we saw as a whole. Mexico's demand continues to be quite impressive there.
I think as you concluded, you said something that I think was appealing to your audience and probably to our viewers, which is basically you're looking at a slow and steady, but still increase in producer prices as we move into 2024, and more importantly, maybe beyond.
Yes, that is kind of how we at Rabo AgriFinance are looking at things for 2024. 2023 was a challenging year for dairy farmers, very difficult, if any kind of profitability saw last year. We do see a little bit of recovery in both kind of Class 3 and Class 4 prices this year. I think the lower supply driving a little bit of that after several months of lower supply, finally seeing a little bit of that bullish impact. End users kind of taking note of the tighter milk around the globe. End users working through some of their inventories that they had that were maybe preventing purchases throughout 2023. All of this kind of points to a little bit higher milk prices throughout this year. We do anticipate both Class 3 and Class 4 will average higher this year than they did in 2023, which is kind of good news overall. I don't want to kind of overinflate expectations, though. I don't think we're going back to those record high levels of 2022. A very good year for dairy farmers, but I do think it will be a little bit better than the pain that we saw over some of the past several months.
Well, I'm sure some relief will be appreciated by the industry for sure. We're speaking today with Lucas Fuess, Senior Dairy Analyst with Rabo AgriFinance. We're at World Ag Expo. I'm Joel Hastings with Dairy Business News.